Hi. Today we're going to talk about mental illness. I've been living with mental illness for a few years now, and I mostly keep my discussions about it, hello, string injured, um, to the depression, anxiety variety, because that's the part of mental illness that people tend to understand the most. But today I'm going to make a video about a condition that I have and have had for several years. And now I've finally reached a point where I think it's time that I actually get some help. What this disorder is considered by some people to be an offshoot or a subproduct of OCD. Some consider it to be a separate disease entirely. But the condition that I have is called trichotillomania. The definition of trichotillomania is a disorder that involves recurrent, irresistible urges to pull out one's own hair. So, I pull my own hair out. And I've been doing this for, I would estimate, almost 10 years at this point. And I've never sought help for it. I've never spoken to a medical professional about it, and there are some reasons for that we'll get into. But I think the first place that I need to start if I'm going to tell the story is at the beginning. And the way it started for me was at some point in middle school was the first time I had a habit that had to do with my hair. In middle school, I would have a lot of split ends, and I would pull the split ends apart and try to find split ends in my hair that I could pull apart and get rid of. That wasn't actually what I was doing, but in my brain, that's what that was. That I wouldn't consider to be trichotillomania, but I find it interesting that that was something that occurred prior to what I would consider the first time that I felt the compulsion to pull my hair out. The first time I wanted to pull my hair out, I actually remember relatively well. I was in high school and at a friend's house, and I was sitting on her couch, and I went and I just kind of ran my hands through my hair and somehow ended up finding this hair on the back of my head, and it was thick and black and wiry and very different from the hair that I have typically on my head. I don't know if you can tell, but the hair that I have typically is blonde and thinner. So I felt this hair on the back of my head, and my first thought was, this doesn't belong here. So I did what any normal person I thought would do, and I pulled it out and I looked at it. And I remember running it through my fingers and feeling kind of the different kinks and bends in it, and just having the thought of, this doesn't belong on my head. And that was the first time I pulled my hair out. And then, as mental disorders tend to do, it got worse. So if there was one hair on the back of my head that didn't belong, what if there were others? And my brain kind of went on this journey that it's been on now for 10 years of finding the hairs that don't belong on my head and removing them, which is a really, really strange thought. I acknowledge that that's a very mentally ill thought, but that's what goes on, is trying to find the hairs that don't belong. If it's, another thick and black and kinky one, or one that is not perfectly straight. My hair is naturally straight. So one that, maybe has a little bit of a curl or a twist in it, or a hair that's, too thin, or like a baby hair, or any kind of hair that I think doesn't belong on my head. I just feel the need to find it and pull it out. But then, of course, as time went on, it didn't even become so much of an active thought as something that I just couldn't stop doing. And sometime in high school, maybe early college, was the first time I thought that maybe I wasn't in control of this anymore. For a long time, I thought it was a bad habit, right? In the same way that pulling at my split ends had been kind of a bad habit. I thought that this was just a bad habit that I could get rid of if I wanted to not do it badly enough. So I would say to myself at the beginning of the day, I'm not going to pull my hair out today. I'm not going to do it. And of course, by mid-morning, usually I would be back at the top of my head pulling my hair out again. Or I would think, if I don't pull my hair out today, I'll get a reward. Like, I'll reward myself. I'll buy myself a candy bar or something. And that didn't help. There was no incentive that I could give myself that was strong enough to stop pulling my hair out. But I still just thought it was a habit that I just was having a really hard time kicking. So then it turned into, every time I started a new kind of chapter in my life or a new phase in my life, every time I had a life change, that was when I would say to myself, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm starting over. So every time I started a new job or moved into a new apartment or I started at a new school, starting college was a big one for me. I thought, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm in a new place, I'm going to be different this time. And it never was. For example, during my freshman year of college, within probably a week, the garbage can lived next to the desk where I had my computer, because I would pull my hair out and put it in the garbage can. Or when I moved into the house that I lived in for most of my college years, I would think to myself, I'm going to be different now. Other people are in this house. I'm not going to make them find my hair all over the place. But that didn't help either. There was nothing that I could do that could stop myself from pulling my hair out. And the hardest part about talking about it now, and the hardest part about living with it so far, has been the shame and the knowledge that other people notice. I know other people notice. I'm not dumb. And it's reached a point now where I'm in public and it's still happening. I do it on the train, I do it on the bus, I do it at work, I do it in front of other people, I do it at church, I do it with my friends. There's not a place where I can stop myself from pulling my hair out. I remember one time in college, I was with a group of friends and we were playing improv games, and I don't remember really the context or what game we were playing, but there was one that involved imitating other people in the room. And one of my friends was assigned to imitate me, and as soon as he was supposed to start imitating me, the very first thing he did was, there was no other defining characteristic for me other than that I am doing something with my head. And I remember seeing that and the full realization of how obvious it is and how much other people notice it and take notice and wonder about it. That was the first time that I really felt shame. Like, I had known that other people knew, kind of in the back of my mind. I had my mom throughout high school telling me to stop doing it, but that was the first moment that it was really thrown into sharp relief that, no, everyone notices, and I couldn't fool myself anymore into thinking that other people are not knowing what's happening here. And still, I didn't seek help. But even then I didn't know it was a mental disorder. I didn't realize that until several years down the road. So I just thought that I had just this really weird habit that I couldn't stop doing. So instead I resorted to tactics to try to physically keep myself from pulling my hair out. One of the things that I do fairly often is, if my hair is long enough, I'll put it up. But you'll notice even that doesn't stop me, because there are still baby hairs here that are much more numerous than on normal people. I've tried shaving my head. A big reason why I shaved my head was so that at least I could get some kind of relief from having this compulsion. And I knew at the time that it was kind of like putting a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem, but I wasn't willing to go to therapy for it because I didn't know, like, what is therapy going to be like? What kind of treatment is this going to be? Am I going to have to be on a bunch of medications? Is it going to be, I was too afraid to face that, so instead I just shaved all my head off. And that was nice for a few months when it was too short to actually do anything, but as soon as it was long enough to pull out again, my head was right back up at the back of my head. So even that was a temporary solution to what I'm realizing now is a permanent problem. So, like, why now? Why am I now finally handling this? One, I've been in therapy for a few months now, and we haven't talked about it yet. We've talked about other things that have been going on in my life that have kind of had to take precedent, which I don't really want to go into. But now that those have kind of been a little bit more resolved, I feel like I have the time to devote to treating my trichotillomania. And also, I'm just tired. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being embarrassed every time I have to go and get my hair cut because they always ask. And either I have to make up some dumb excuse about, I got caught on something, or having to tell the truth and then explain what that is and have a whole mental health discussion with the person who's cutting my hair, or even worse, have to play dumb and just say, I don't know. There's no easy way to avoid how embarrassing having to get a haircut is, because they always notice and they always bring it up, and I'm tired of that. I'm tired of feeling like I am incapable of not doing this very simple thing. It feels like a personal failure. And I know on a very logical level that it's not. I know that it's a mental disorder. But it feels like a personal failure. And also on a purely superficial level, I miss having good hair. I miss being able to do things with it that are more complicated than a ponytail, because that's about all I can do. I'm tired of having to wear headbands sometimes because the baby hairs at the front of my head are too prominent and kind of make me look like I have weird, like, devil horns coming out of my head. I'm tired of feeling embarrassed about the way that I look, and I'm tired of pulling my hair out, literally. So now I've reached a point where I think I'm ready to finally tackle this thing. And I don't know how long it's going to take or what it's going to involve, but I think it's time now. The German word of the day for today is Störung, which means disorder.